Every rider has a dream. Every dream has a beginning. This is mine. Living for the centre line. Every dressage test begins the same way. You enter at A, you ride down the centre line, and for a few seconds, it's just you, your horse, and all the possibilities. But dreams don't begin on the centre line. They begin years before that, long before the championships, long before the success, long before anyone believes you can do it. They begin with a little girl who falls in love with horses.
Come on, Sophia!
Well done, Sophia!
2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my god. Good girl! Good girl.
Look up and go. Good girl. Well done.
I'm Sophia. I'm a 3-time European Championship dressage rider, and I'm taking you behind the scenes of my journey towards one day representing Great Britain at senior international level. But before we get into where I'm going, I think it's important to explain where I came from. Because if you'd met me when I was younger, I don't think you would have looked at me and thought, that's a future European rider. Actually, for a while, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. Well, that's not entirely true. I knew I wanted to do something. I just hadn't quite worked out what. When I was 4 years old, I sat on a horse for the first time. And looking back now, maybe that should have been enough of a clue. But apparently, I needed a little bit more convincing. So, over the next few years, I tried everything, and I mean everything. I did ballet, music, singing, salsa dancing, parrot training, water sports, donutting, horseball, polo, bull riding. And at one point, I even wanted to join the army. Honestly, I was collecting hobbies faster than I could keep up with them. The problem was that none of them stuck. Some of them I wasn't very good at, some of them I was terrible at, and some of them I simply got bored of after 5 minutes. I tried it all, but I failed at most of it. But horses were different. No matter what I tried, horses were always there. I always came back to them. One story my family still laughs about happened at school. We were doing cross country. Now, if you know me, you know I was never a cross country runner. And I remember running around the course thinking this was possibly the worst invention in human history. And at some point, I turned to my sports teacher and said, I was not born to run. I was born to ride. Now, whether that's inspirational or slightly dramatic, coming from a child, I'll let you decide. But I genuinely think that was the moment I started understanding what I wanted. Although, if you ask my mother or grandmother Jojo, they'll tell you they knew long before I did. Jojo is my grandmother, and throughout this series, you'll quickly realise she is one of the most important people in my story. So while I was figuring out what I wanted to do, dreaming about ponies, Jojo was already figuring out how to make those dreams possible. One day, she decided that if I wanted to dream big, I needed to see what big looked like. So, she took me to the 2018 Pony European Championships. Neither of us had any idea that this trip would completely change the direction of my life. I was 12 years old, and the championships were being held in the UK. It was the perfect opportunity. We weren't competitors, we weren't owners, we were just spectators. When we arrived at Bishop Burton, bags in hand, the weight of the dream on our shoulders, I remember arriving at our hotel and it looked like the beginning of a bad comedy film. We arrived excited, this was the Pony European Championships, but our hotel? Closed. I remember thinking, what do we do now? It was getting later in the day and we had travelled all day, we didn't know the area we were in, and suddenly the possibility of spending the week sleeping in the car was becoming very real. At that point, most sensible people probably would have turned around and gone home. But thankfully, Jojo and I are always up for an adventure. This was just the first of many. So we tried the showground. We arrived, explained our situation, and asked if there was any accommodation left over from the pony teams. I still cannot believe the answer to this day. There was one room left. One. We were shown to the room, and I remember very clearly that when I walked in, you could barely fit 2 people past each other, and there was one bed on the right-hand side of the room. So for 5 days, Jojo had the bed and I had the floor, which at 12 years old felt like a perfectly reasonable trade. Every morning, I woke up inside the Pony European Championships, surrounded by the teams, and honestly, I would have slept in a cupboard if it meant being there. Most people probably spent that week watching the competition. I spent it studying every single detail. I watched every rider I could. I watched warm-ups, I watched prize givings, I watched every single test from start to finish. I watched how riders prepared entering the arena. I made notes, lots of notes. I filled pages with observations about ponies, riders, training and freestyles. I remember drawing boxes as the arena and drawing down the floor plans. I wanted to understand everything. Looking back now, reading the notes, I think that was the first time I truly saw what was possible. Until then, horses had been something I'd loved, but this was different. This was elite sport. This was the best pony riders in Europe. And for the first time, I could actually picture myself there. Not like immediately there, not realistically there, but somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny voice whispered, "What if?" The funny thing is, while I was standing there dreaming about one day being a part of the European Championships, I had no idea who was riding in front of me. Years later, I realised some of those riders became my teammates. Some of the ponies I watched and made notes on would eventually become ponies I rode myself. At 12 years old, they seemed a million miles away. They were the people in the arena, and I was the girl sitting in the stands with a notebook. But life has a funny way of bringing things a full circle. That week also introduced me to people who played huge roles in my future. People like Carol Hogg, who invited me to my first under-21s camp, which I attended on foot because I didn't even have my first pony. Later on, I rode my first FEI pony team test at under-21s camp. My score was rounded up to 60%. I also sat next to Julie Geraghty. I had no idea years later I'd ride Julie's pony WS Jackson. I also had no idea I'd eventually qualify him for the 2023 Pony European Championships in Le Mans. At the time, they were simply people I just met at a horse show. I definitely had no idea that I was quietly building connections that would shape my entire career. One of my favourite memories from that week happened completely by chance. An Irish pony was competing when a cameraman flapped his jacket near the arena. He was stood on scaffolding on the right-hand corner of the arena. The pony spooked, and immediately Jojo turned around to the pony rider's father, who happened to be stood behind us, and said she should get a rerun. This conversation led to another and another, and from this conversation came one of the most important horses in my journey. Another pony on the Irish team was Belsassa, who later became my first leased pony, or as everyone knew him, Sempi. At the time, I couldn't possibly have understood how important that moment would have become. But looking back now, I can trace so much of my journey back to that one week. A closed hotel, a mattress on the floor, a notebook full of dreams that I can look back on now. It is almost freaky to see what I wrote about the ponies that I would later ride. But after a bit of rub of the green, sometimes that is all you need to change your life. Because I arrived at the Pony European Championships dreaming about one day riding there, and years later, I did. And this is only the beginning.